He lay dying in the sweltering jungle. His body was a road map of 1,000 insect bites, his lungs burning with fever. He saw the gold. It was not in his hand, but shimmering in his mind's eye. A final, cruel hallucination. He wasn't killed by a rival's blade or a tribal arrow. He was killed by a beautiful, terrible lie. This is the story of El Dorado. Not a city of gold, but a curse that consumed the most powerful men on earth. A myth that promised everything but delivered only madness, ruin, and death. It was the ultimate get-rich-quick scheme. It was a viral myth that promised easy wealth, and everyone who chased it died. So today we're going to dissect a curse. The Gilded promise that drove men to madness, and it all begins with a sacred act on a mystical lake. Before the Spanish, there was a sacred ceremony. For centuries, the Muisca people of ancient Colombia, which was a society of skilled artisans and spiritual leaders, performed a profound ritual on the shores of Lake Guatavita. They saw their world as an extension of the divine, and their gold wasn't currency. It was a reflection of the sun, a powerful link to the gods. Gold was their sacred metal, believed to be the sweat of their sun god. It was not to be hoarded, but given freely. Their very economy was based on a system of sacred reciprocity, of giving back to the gods and to the earth that had provided for them. When a new chief, or Zipa, ascended to power, he would be taken to the center of a lake on a magnificent raft. His body was coated in a sticky resin, and then he was dusted in pure gold powder. And that turned him into the Gilded Man. He stood there, a figure of radiant power, and offered his people's most precious treasures to the depths below. These treasures were ornately crafted gold figurines of animals and people and raw materials that were believed to be the tears of the gods. The gold wasn't a possession. It was a symbolic offering, and by giving it back, they were maintaining cosmic balance and showing reverence for their creators. The Gilded Man would then plunge into the lake to wash the gold from his body, and the treasures would sink to the bottom. This was the true spiritual ritual of El Dorado. They were a people that were so rich they could afford to throw gold and jewels into a lake as an act of worship. Their wealth wasn't in what they had, but in what they were willing to give away. To the Muisca, gold was not currency. It was a sacred medium of communication with the divine. But the Spanish, driven by insatiable greed, misunderstood every single part of this. When the whispers of this ceremony reached their ears, their fevered minds ran wild. They had seen the immense wealth of the Aztecs and Inca empires, and their desperate souls latched onto a new myth. The story of the Gilded Man became the Golden City in their imaginations. It was a lie they desperately wanted to be true. It validated their brutal conquest and gave them a divine justification for their actions. The most powerful empire on earth had just set sail for a city that didn't exist, and they were about to unleash a madness unlike anything the world had ever seen. Most think the hunt for El Dorado was a Spanish obsession, but the truth is the first great expedition was led by German bankers. In fact, it was the Welser family of Augsburg, a powerful banking dynasty that controlled trade across Europe. They had loaned so much money to the Spanish king that they were given a vast territory in Venezuela as collateral, and they too heard the rumors of a kingdom of gold. And this was a new kind of greed, not the brutal religious fervor of the conquistadors, but the cold, calculating avarice of a corporation. The Welser family sent Ambrosius Iyengar and his men on a merciless expedition into the jungle. Their goal wasn't glory or God, it was a simple transactional one: profit. They were a business venture. They ran it with a ruthless bottom-line mentality. Their journey was a slow march into the heart of a relentless green hell. Iyengar's men died not just from starvation and disease, but from the unbearable psychological pressure. The dense jungle canopy blocked the sun, plunging them into a claustrophobic twilight. They were constantly on alert, battling venomous snakes, swarms of mosquitoes, and unseen hostile tribes. The jungle, it turned out, cared nothing for profit margins. It was a relentless, unforgiving force that consumed them all. Iyengar himself died in a native ambush, and his search was a complete and total failure. It was the world's first corporate-sponsored treasure hunt, and it was about to go spectacularly wrong. But the obsession continued. The Welser family, still desperate to recoup their investment, sent another man, George von Speyer, and then another, Philip von Hutten, They led expedition after expedition, each one a slow motion descent into hell. They returned with no gold, their numbers decimated. The jungle and a myth were more powerful than any European army. The Welser family lost their fortunes and their land, all in the pursuit of a fantasy. Could a legend be so powerful that it can bankrupt an entire empire? The answer is yes. The legend of El Dorado wasn't just a simple misinterpretation. It was a psychological weapon. It convinced thousands of men to walk into a living hell. The expeditions were a continuous cycle of suffering, betrayal, and madness. Men went insane from the isolation and the sheer brutal physical toll. The desperation was so profound that on some expeditions, starving men reportedly resorted to cannibalism, a final horrifying act of human breakdown, and they fought over scraps of food and fresh water, and they murdered each other for a rumor. The jungle became an active antagonist. It wasn't a scenic background. It was a powerful, terrifying force that slowly, relentlessly broke a person's will. The oppressive humidity, the venomous snakes and insects, the anacondas and piranhas, all of it was a testament to the sheer delusion of their mission. They were so blinded by the promise of gold that they didn't see the real wealth around them, the vibrant ecosystems, the rich cultures, and the knowledge of the indigenous people that they were destroying. It was a beautiful and terrible idea, like a magic carpet that promised paradise but just dropped you in a swamp. The real tragedy is the humanity lost. It's a story about a fantasy that becomes more real than the world itself. It teaches us that greed is an acid that corrodes every good thing it touches, from the spirit of a person to the soul of an empire, and the most powerful example of its curse is the final desperate act of the man who became its greatest champion. The legend of El Dorado drove countless men to ruin, but none more famous than Sir Walter Raleigh. Raleigh was an English explorer and court favorite, and was a man of immense talent and even greater ego. After a failed expedition and a secret marriage that angered Queen Elizabeth I, he fell from grace and was imprisoned in the Tower of London for treason. But he had one last card to play. Even though he knew he could not escape by force, he decided to escape with a story. So from his cell, he wrote a book, a sprawling and persuasive account titled The Discovery of the Large, Rich, and Beautiful Empire of Guyana. In it, he claimed he had found El Dorado, not a city, but a vast empire of immense wealth on the Orinoco River. He described its people, its rituals, and its riches in vivid detail, and his prose was so compelling and powerful that he was eventually released and given a royal commission for a final desperate expedition. And this wasn't a book, it was a Hail Mary pass. Walter Raleigh was so desperate to get out of jail, he invented a new reality for an entire nation. But here's the most shocking part. The book was a complete fabrication. Raleigh was not trying to find El Dorado, he was trying to sell a myth to save his own life. His final expedition was a total failure. He found no gold. His men attacked a Spanish settlement, and the English king, now desperate to appease the Spanish, had him arrested. Raleigh was executed for a crime he committed years ago, a charge brought back to appease a foreign power. He failed to provide the gold he promised, and he angered his king. And the very myth he used to buy his freedom led to his beheading. The curse of El Dorado, fueled by greed, had claimed its last and most famous victim. So what is the legacy of El Dorado? It's a story of a beautiful ritual so tragically misunderstood it led to thousands of deaths. It's a story of a myth so powerful it could bankrupt an entire empire, and it's a story of a man that was so consumed by a lie that he was ultimately killed by it. The gold was never found, but the treasure was never the point. The point was the curse, and the curse was real. It was a dream that led to a nightmare, a city that didn't exist but changed the world forever. The search for a fantasy that revealed the terrifying reality of human nature. Like it if you like it. Like, subscribe, comment. Talk to you soon.